The House votes to impeach President Trump for a second time. The debate over big tech censorship, it's heating up again. YouTube, now the latest company to ban President Trump from its platform. The company suspending the president's account for the next 7 days. Quote, after review and in light of concerns about the ongoing potential for violence, we removed new content uploaded to Donald J. Trump's channel for violating our policies, end quote. And some news of the so-called conservative, about the so-called conservative Twitter platform, Parler. The CEO now saying his social media app may not return at all after being shut down. Dana Perino, Amazon responded in the court today. They had a suit response, and they said that Parler really was banning them was about violent content. They listed 100 plus examples of violent content, things like, we are going to fight for a civil war, white people need to rain down suffering and death, death threats to Mitch McConnell, Barack Obama, and others. Do you agree that's violent content?
Look, I don't like it when it's aimed at me, and I think that everybody here has had things like that are aimed at them online, and it can be completely disturbing. It can make you lose sleep at night. It can make you want to get off these the platforms altogether. And I'm not for it. I don't think anybody is for it. I am for speech and free speech, and speech is not violence. But can the FBI is monitoring some of these things, like for the riot. And they're like, yeah, well, we picked up on it, and they said that they were going to be there. Like, it's one thing to make a threat that's general, but when it gets specific, there are problems. And I think that in the wake of the riot, when Amazon was looking at its terms of service and then Parler's terms of service, and they just decided to shut it all down. I don't know how the lawsuit will turn out. I think that Parler has some pretty good lawyers, but I mean, Amazon, it's got great lawyers. And remember, YouTube that you mentioned, the parent company is Google. I think that within the first 6 months of this year, you are going to see a pretty concerted effort, and I think it will be bipartisan for different reasons, but for regulation of the internet companies. Biden wants it. The Republicans want it. There will be something that happens in the next 6 months.
Katie, the platforms, again, are making the case that this is not about censoring people left or right, but about violence. I wonder if it's persuasive to you that they acted only after the events of last week.
Yeah, it's actually not persuasive at all. If the standard in the terms of service for these companies is that you can't post violent content, then that's fine, but they need to do a better job of policing it equally. You know, Facebook was sued a number of years ago by an Israeli attorney for Hamas and other terrorists there posting on Facebook about how they were going to go out and commit terrorist attacks, and then they actually did it and killed people, and Facebook tried to wash their hands of it and say that they weren't responsible. There's plenty of violent rhetoric that goes on the internet, but this idea that it doesn't happen on Twitter, that it doesn't happen on Facebook, that it only happens on somewhat conservative websites, especially Parler, isn't true. Now, can they do a better job of policing it? Sure, but this idea that it's only coming from one website is just beyond parody, actually.
Jesse, do you think, though, that these private companies, that's what these platforms are right to regulate what they see as violent content?
Well, if speech is violence and silence is violence, then what am I supposed to do, Juan? I mean, seriously, there's no way out. But if you read what YouTube actually wrote in their statement, it's pretty scary. They say they have concerns for the potential of violence. Just take Trump out of it for a second. You have an unelected, wealthy, liberal executive, probably living in California, deciding on his own or her own what he or she feels might cause the potential for violence. Think about how low that standard is right there. Are NRA videos going to get nuked next? Are ICE videos, you know, they said abolish ICE. I mean, could the videos from the Five get nuked? Dana's constantly tossing around reckless rhetoric. That could incite violence at any moment. I went on YouTube today, Juan, and I typed in NWA F the police. Remember that video? That's on there.
Yeah.
That could incite a potential for violence. Madonna, I want to bomb the White House, that's on there. Snoop Dogg putting a gun to Trump head, that's on there. You got Antifa videos, you got jihadi videos. I mean, what don't you have on YouTube? The problem is the left only sees the potential for violence on the right. So what they do is they have these little squirrels at CNN that call these corporations and say, hey, guys, and they start harassing the corporations. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that guy? What are you going to do about that guy? Until these corporations are like, fine, leave me alone, we'll ban them. And then you can't have a competing platform because they're monopolies, and they'll just take you out like they did Parler.
All right, so Pete, what I'm thinking is if this was Democrats or leftists, you just heard what Jesse said, and that kind of language, don't you, or even if it was terrorists, foreign terrorists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, don't you think we'd want American companies to protect America?
Yeah, wouldn't you think? The leader of the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, the Ayatollah of Iran, has a Twitter account and tweets all the time about the destruction of Israel and death to America. Yet Twitter, the American company, does nothing about it. The day that Parler was banned, Juan, what was trending on Twitter? Hang Mike Pence, trending. And so of course they selectively went after Parler as an alternative to them where there's real free speech. What happened here, Juan, is your favorite word. Collusion, okay? This is collusion of big tech companies going against Trump supporters and people, advocates of free speech, because they control it. It's very Orwellian. You don't need just the government to have authoritarianism. You can have corporations, the media collude together to push people out of the public square that they don't like, and that's precisely what's happening. And as far as Parler is concerned, they may never come back. They literally have no servers and may never come back. This is the unpersoning of George Orwell, and it is the left that's doing it, Juan.
Wow, yeah, okay.